share with you a loud noise. Matthew's second chapter with these props that you can see if you happen to be close enough, because it is the account of the wise men. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. Calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they'd heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they'd seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. So ends the reading of God's holy word.
Thanks be to God.
Invite us to pray. Gracious God, we're all on a journey of one kind or another, as the wise ones were too. Help us to find strength from this story of your presence, your glowing, brilliant presence, even in the midst of a dark time, that we can trust that you continue to lead us to that place of deep miracle and great joy. This we ask in your holy name. Amen. It's quite a temptation at this point in my life to think that on this particular Sunday I have to deliver the Great American Sermon, which I've never done yet. So I had to kind of bring that to consciousness over the last week or so and sort of put it aside, and to remind myself that I'm just going to preach one more time, keep it in the day. So here's what I have to share. The more I learn about the three wise men, the more interesting I find them. And I don't know a lot, but a few things I've learned. If I go back to my youth, as a kid, while setting up the nativity scene in the dining room, these three characters seemed kind of exotic and flashy on the one hand, but also very ceramic. And actually hollow. They were sort of manger scene extras. They had names, but I couldn't remember two of them, except for that one that was obviously named after the popular cartoon ghost, Casper. I thought that was kind of funny as a kid, because he didn't look the least bit like Casper the Friendly Ghost, which puzzled me. But I suppose these visitors from the East have long been a puzzle to many people. traveling hundreds of miles from the region that we now know as Iran, Iraq, loaded with loot, guided by a star, looking for a king, no GPS. And I have to hand it to folks like that, who are willing to venture into the unknown, not to mention putting a lot of money on the line. Yes, they do it. But when I get past some of the strange trappings of these three men, I begin to see some interesting parallels with my own journey that brought me here to Bristol. For one, I too came from the east. Not far east. And certainly not on a camel. I came in a Mazda. And to be sure, I was no wise man, God knows. But in a real sense, it was, for me too, a journey out of the familiar and into the unknown. Not just into the exotic realm of Bristol, but into a new challenge of serving a church, something I vowed I would never do. Honestly, I know very little about the lives of these three visitors from the East, but I can infer that they were searching. They were keeping an eye on the heavens. They were looking for a sign, a direction, an invitation. And I guess I was too at the time in 2003. These three were responding to a star. I was responding to a phone call. And a local call at that, from Harrison Marble. But either way, we responded. We headed west. The most powerful connection that I have with the three magi, and this is where it's going to get tougher, is that their journey took them into close proximity with the Christ child. Mine did too. Right here, in your midst, where I found Jesus Christ so very accessible, alive, and real. Christ cradled in the hearts of so many wonderful friends, some of whom are no longer with us. But wonderful friends over the years who brought to vivid life the Spirit in acts of kindness and generosity and faith, enough to bring a guy to his knees, like the wise man. I suppose the really big difference between me and the Magi was the extent of their sacrifice. They picked up stakes, they packed their bags, they put everything on the line, put everything on the camels. I, on the other hand, never left Ontario County. I brought no gold, no frankincense, no myrrh. Couldn't find myrrh in Wegmans if I tried. I just toted a couple of used guitars. And I came over here only to preach for a few Sundays. Okay, so it did turn out to be 800. I didn't know that at the time. I think the three wise guys and I shared one other quality, and that is basic ignorance. My ignorance is a well-established fact, but scholars suggest that the three travelers were a little bit oblivious too. They were at least naive enough to go ask a local king about the birth of another local king. Not a good idea. But sometimes I think when we're caught up in something incredibly good, it seems almost inconceivable that anyone and everyone doesn't see it the same way. It never occurs to us, perhaps, that they may not see it as good news. Here's a case in point, kind of a simple homespun example. I remember when a friend introduced me to raw oysters. And it was his favorite delicacy. He loved them. There was a glow in his face as he shared one with me for the first time in my life. And I think he was shocked by the stricken look on my face. He loved them, but I just didn't share the good news. About like Herod. Herod didn't share the good news. Of course, he was primed to be nervous. He was, after all, a puppet of the Roman Empire. And puppets can be easily yanked. And he knew it. And so he tried his best to pull some strings of his own in order to safeguard his power. Herod was no fool. Whoever this newborn king was obviously attracting attention from some high-level intellectuals from very far away. Herod may not have been able to spell intellectual, but he was pretty astute when it came to power politics. And so, sadly, he resorted to violence. Horrible violence. Well, if these three wise men were a little short on political savvy, their geography wasn't that hot either. Although, in their defense, navigation by stars is a bit of a trick. So I guess they could be excused missing the mark by about 9 miles, the distance between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. Close, but no cigar. Hence their need to ask Herod for directions. But isn't that funny? 9 miles. Just about the distance between Canandaigua and Bristol. I'll let you decide which one's the birthplace of Jesus. I just know that 9 miles sometimes might as well be 900 miles. Frankly, during my early years in Canandaigua, I really didn't have a clue about the Bristol church. I'd heard of Zadig Hun. I knew he planted a bunch of them around, but I didn't know about this one. Didn't know about the wonderful, faithful ministries going on literally minutes down the road. But maybe we often don't have a clue what's going on just down the road. Maybe we don't have a clue what good stuff is happening just down the week. So in that way, maybe we are a bit like the Magi, moving along, often in the dark, guided by some sort of light, but truly unable to see the fullness of the blessing that awaits. And sometimes that journey to that blessing requires us to ask some questions, as they did. Even provoke a little suspicion in those who just might be threatened by our questions, or our faith, or our actions. As I say, not everyone thinks the good news is especially good. Particularly those who are anxious, enamored of power, and averse to a whole lot of light. Those who thrive in the dark. Years ago, our beloved Newfoundland Gracie used to love to jump into any body of water she could find. All 120 pounds of her. Newfies are, of course, water dogs. And incidentally, once in the water, they will rescue anything and anyone in close proximity, so beware. Well, at the end of a day of rescuing, Gracie would eventually settle down to sleep, often with her damp, black fur creating a lovely habitat for things that grow in the dark. And so next day, she'd greet us at the breakfast table with feet smelling like a gymnasium. Time for antifungal cream. We didn't want mushrooms sprouting between her toes. Some things just love the dark. The wise men traversed a whole lot of dark before they reached the light, before they drew near to that radiance of Christ glowing in the middle of nowhere. And I guess our things aren't that different. Plenty of dark, strange terrain, but hopefully just enough flashes of brilliance to lead us onward. Enough to remind us that we don't have to live in the dark. Well, throughout the 16 and a half years here at United Church of Bristol, I've been blessed by a whole lot of fellow travelers who've had their eyes fixed upon the light of Christ, determined to follow it, delighted to share it, and I'm grateful more than I can say. And even as I leave, to quite literally go home by another road, pointing my camel not east, but south now, I do so convinced that the light on the hill here will keep shining for a long time to come. So God bless all of us as we continue to follow that.